All right, I think we'll get started. Good afternoon and welcome to the third webinar in the Farmer-Led Webinar Series hosted by DATCAP, UW Discovery Farms, and the UW Division of Extension. I'm Rachel Rushman. I'm the Program Manager for the Producer-Led Grants Program. This webinar series is focused on planting new ideas and growing conservation within the Producer-Led Grants Network. So each webinar will be focused on a one-on-one conversation with a farmer about specific conservation practices or methods that they're using on their farm. And then we're also going to get the chance to hear a bit about the producer-led group they're involved with too. Today we will be interviewing Tony Brey of Brey Cycle Farms, who is an active member of the producer-led group Peninsula Pride Farms. He's also a member of the Door Kewaunee Demonstration Farm Network. And we have Barry Bubolz from NRCS who's going to be interviewing Tony, and they work closely together on the NRCS demo farms in Door Kewaunee County. So today we're going to be talking about growing alternative forages. We do have a lot more participants than the first webinar that we had. It's grown substantially just in these first couple webinars, so we're glad that the word's getting out about them. I do have a couple quick notes and announcements before I hand it off to Erica here. We will be posting all of the recordings, the notes, and photos from the webinars to the Producer-Led Webinar webpage, which is linked on the screen displayed. If you are calling in and you can't see that, you can just Google Producer-Led Grants and you should be able to easily find that page. Discovery Farms is also housing this information, so hopefully it'll be easy to find. We want the information collected from these webinars to help facilitate more conversations on conservation and to share lessons learned across the network. And then we're also using it to evaluate our program, which is where UW Division of Extension comes in. And then just a couple quick programmatic announcements. So we have our impact report completed for the grant years 2018 and 2019. I had just sent that out to just the main collaborators and farm leaders, and it basically highlights all the successes and challenges over those grant years, and then also looks at the impact of the overall program. You can find that now on our webpage, and we'll be doing some more outreach to get that impact report out also. Reminder that webinars are the second Tuesday of every month at noon. And then related to COVID-19, I had said this on the last webinar, but in case you missed it or didn't get my email about it and you are a grant recipient, basically if you need to cancel events related to the restrictions that COVID-19 is putting in place for us, just submit a revised grant budget and Susan Mockert and myself will look at it for approval. With that, if you have any questions, you can always email me or Erica Olson about these webinars too. And with that, I'll turn it over for Erica for some of the webinar logistics.
Great, thank you, Rachel. And thank you everyone who's listening in on this webinar live today. We really have been amazed at how much it has grown in just a short time. And a reminder, these webinars are recorded and the audio is being housed on the producer-led page as well as the Discovery Farms page. So hopefully you can find those. If you've missed any of the previous webinars, we had some great topics earlier about planting corn into standing rye, as well as interseeding rye into standing soybeans. So if you haven't listened to those, I encourage you to do so. Today's webinar, as Rachel mentioned, we'll be talking about alternative forages. And if you have questions as we go throughout the webinar, we will be using the chat feature as we're going to try to keep everyone who's not speaking muted to eliminate background noise. But we hope to have some good discussion and questions, facilitate questions that come in. So type those in the chat and Rachel and I will read those to Tony and Barry to answer. And the Discovery Farms program has been happy to partner with DATCAP on these webinars. If you're not familiar with our program, we are a research and outreach organization, part of the Division of Extension, and we focus on water quality research. We have edge of field monitoring throughout the state of Wisconsin, both on surface and tile. And we also have some special nitrogen use efficiency projects and a little bit of soil health work going on. So if you are interested in those pieces of our research, I encourage you to visit our website. And with that, I'm going to pass the mic on over to Barry Bubolz from NRCS and Tony Brey of Brey Cycle Farm.
Well, thank you, Erica. As Erica said, my name is Barry Bubolz. I work with the Natural Resources Conservation Service and have been lucky enough to work with the demonstration farm networks here in Northeast Wisconsin. And so today we're lucky to have Tony Brey, who is a member of Peninsula Pride, a farmer-led watershed, but also a member of our Door Kewaunee Demonstration Farm. And so as Erica said, the topic today is going to be alternative forages. And so I kind of just want to start off the webinar with Tony briefly just describing your farming operation, major crops, size of farm, just some of those logistics.
Okay. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I'm Tony. Our family, my brother Jacob and our wives Mariah and Lauren, we dairy farm in Door County, so Northeast Wisconsin. We have about 600 milking cows, and we raise our young stock and finish our crossbred beef animals. And we raise about 1,200 acres, raise all the crops on about 1,200 acres of land for those animals.
Tony, just briefly describe where you are located, because that is a rather important aspect of today's topic too.
Yeah, we're located on the Door County Peninsula, so much cooler temperatures. I mean, we're first starting planting corn now just because of where the temperatures have been. Our home farm is located probably 7-8 miles from Lake Michigan, but where our young stock are housed is only maybe about 2 miles. So there's even quite a bit of temperature difference between where our young stock are raised to where our home farm is. So we deal with cooler temperatures and a shorter growing season than most in Wisconsin.
Yeah, just to reiterate that fact. For example, last week when I was over along the lakeshore for some of the farms, there was close to a 15-degree difference between the farms located right along the lake and where I live, 45 minutes inland. So it is definitely a big factor and an influencer on the cropping system there. So alternative forages, and so that's a topic that can include a lot of things. But on your farm, what are the alternative forages that you're utilizing?
Yes, the alternative forages we've had the most success are the kind of the double crop between the sorghum sudan and then the cover crops of triticale and rye. And that combination has worked really well and provided a lot of good feedstuffs for our young stock, and also provided environmental benefits to our soil as well.
So Tony, when you probably have a normal or typical dairy rotation of corn, silage, and alfalfa, and so where are you fitting this sorghum sudan double crop with triticale into that system? A
really good way we found to start it is to establish that rye or triticale after like a small grain, like a wheat or a barley. The triticale or rye that's planted earlier in September really shows a lot more tillering, a lot more growth, and it has a much more tonnage potential the following year. But certainly we also do quite a bit of cover crops, no-till after corn silage as well.
So how many years of experience do you have with these alternative forages?
I'd say we've been about 5 years, kind of slowly growing each year, and we've really enjoyed working with this. the double crop and the rotation, and it's really helped. It's really helped with our manure management. It's opened up some windows to apply manure at different times because you're taking off that rye or triticale later in June, and you're taking off that sorghum for us late August, early September. So it's really helped our nutrient management as well. So I would say about 5 years we've been doing both the cover crops and sorghum Sudan.
And you know, on the 1,200 acres that you guys are farming up there, how many acres are you putting in the sorghum Sudan mix each year?
We'll have about 400 acres of the cover crops. We'll have about 400 acres of corn, and then the last 400 acres are a combination of alfalfa and small grains. And of the 400 acres that we have cover crops for forage, I would say about half of that will go into a sorghum Sudan, and the other half would be transitioned into something else, whether it be we help us establish our alfalfa seedings, or if we do shorter day corn. We've seen shorter day corn do better right along Lake Michigan because, as I mentioned, sorghum still does like heat, and it does better with heat more inland than it does right along the lake. So to answer your question, I would say this year we'll be doing about 200 acres of sorghum Sudan.
Okay. And so just kind of drilling in a little bit more on the exact timing, you mentioned about you know, planting winter triticale or winter rye as that being the starting point, and then coming back with that sorghum Sudan after it. What are the typical dates when are you taking that winter trit off in the spring, like boot stage for the highest quality feed, or are you letting it go more for quantity, I guess?
We are in our area, we're letting it go for quality, more to heading, which for us is typically anywhere from the 10th to the 20th of June, which would typically be a week to 2 weeks after our typical first crop harvest is when we're having the triticale ready to harvest. So it does take the pressure off from that standpoint. It gives us time to get our corn planted and make our first crop, and not be worried about losing the quality of the rye and the triticale. Certainly, if you wanted to use it for cow feed, you would have to take it earlier at that boot stage. But as of now, we feel like it makes a great heifer feed, and we get quite a bit more tonnage by letting it grow a couple more weeks in early summer.
So after taking off that winter trit, and I think you guys are all seeing a picture of Tony's brother Jacob standing in a field of headed out triticale. After taking that triticale off, are you coming back immediately? How are you establishing that sorghum Sudan? Yeah,
this field that we're looking at right here, we no-tilled the sorghum almost immediately after taking off the rye. But in some cases, we're able to, like I said, get manure on some of these fields before establishing the sorghum. Because one of the main things with sorghum is to make sure that the ground is warm enough before establishing it. So I mean, mid June to late June is kind of our target area for establishing the sorghum. So we do have time even after harvest to apply manure, but I would say probably half of our cover crops are then no-tilled into sorghum, and then the other half receive some manure before the sorghum is planted.
Thank you. Just talking about herbicide, and I guess there to back up, that's a picture of one of the hired men at the farm there standing in a field of sorghum Sudan, so you can give gives a little perspective of the tonnage that's out there. But herbicide program, since it's kind of a crop that is not utilized as much as our typical corn and alfalfa, from a herbicide aspect, anything different that you can share with us?
Yeah, we have used very little to no herbicide on either crop, either the triticale, the rye, or the sorghum. We see the sorghum getting a really good start, and kind of drowning out all of the weed pressure. And that's been one of the areas where we've seen savings on the crop side is we haven't sprayed the rye, triticale, or sorghum in almost all cases.
I guess that leads to the question is, like, what's the planting rate that you guys are planting the triticale and then following up with the sorghum sudan? I have a feeling that's probably helping with your weed pressures.
Yeah, the triticale to rye is typically at about 100 pounds. And the sorghum sudan is about at 20 pounds, and they're both established with grain drill, no-till John Deere grain drill.
Is that straight sorghum sudan, or have you guys been trying out some cocktail mixes or other species in there too?
We have not tried the cocktail mixes as of yet. Not to say that we won't, but most of these, the one that we're planting in particular now was one of the top yielding varieties in Matt Aiken's research, I think in 2017 out of UW-Madison. And it's a BMR photoperiod sensitive trait sorghum sudan that we've had good luck with. So that's what we'll be planting again this year.
From a nitrogen standpoint, you talked about, the windows being open for manure. More nitrogen being applied, less. How are you handling that with these nitrogen hungry crops, I guess would be the question.
Well, we're applying either nitrogen or manure, kind of planning in our area for 5 ton of dry matter for the sorghum sudan and 3 ton for the triticale or rye. So we kind of where we want to be with the two of them is, in that 8 ton of dry matter, which for us is 20 to 22 ton corn silage, which is quite good in our area. So, I mean, we're certainly feeling that we're reaching our yield potential with these crops versus just if you did straight corn silage. But you'll see here on the picture that's up, that's a low disturbance applicator that we had last year that we got from Outagamie County to use. And that's that same field. That would be the third picture of the same field. The first picture was the triticale or rye that we took off in the middle of June. Then we no-tilled the sorghum sudan, which at the end of August was that 8 to 9 feet tall sorghum sudan. We took that the 24th of August, and then we came in with the low disturbance. Yep, there's the second picture. And then the third picture is the low disturbance manure application. And then shortly after that, in early September, we no-tilled triticale again, so that we were able to establish the manure and not have to disrupt the soil with any tillage for the whole crop year.
So this picture of the low disturbance toolbar, this happened to be a field day that we had up at the Brey farm. What was the manure rate that you guys were shooting for that day?
I think I'm pretty sure we're in the 10 to 12,000 range. That's where we were, and we were pretty happy with how it looked, how it handled in the field.
So I don't think it's any surprise. Last year was an extremely wet year in Northeast Wisconsin, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Tony, but wasn't this sorghum sudan maybe harvested 2 days, or had just been harvested? You guys put the manure on, and maybe a day later you were able to seed the winter triticale?
Yeah, I mean, what we found with the no-till and some of these crops, the infiltration and the carrying capacity of some of these fields is just tremendous compared to some of the tilled fields. We found that in this instance, and we also found it in our some of our no-till corn from last year. They were basically the only fields that we could drive trucks in last year were the fields that happened to be no-tilled, where everything else pretty much had to go through a dump cart because it was such a wet year. So we think there's more to be learned, and there's more to be said about the no-till and its ability for building soil infiltration and the ability to harvest, making things easier in extreme years like last year.
You mentioned a little bit about economics, and so somebody that was, thinking about this approach, what are the economics? I guess the cost of putting in this sorghum sudan mix versus conventional dairy corn.
Our seed cost is about $30 an acre, so obviously that would be quite a bit less than most corn. We kind of are closer to $80 to $100 an acre on most corn silage crops, and the triticale is pretty similar. At 100 pounds, we would be in that $30 range. Then you'd have your drilling costs, but not having that herbicide cost and helps a lot to cut costs as well.
Some of the sorghum sudan that's being planted the last couple of years has been, 2-cut, 3-cut systems. Have you guys tried that, or are you just solely 1-cut system? Any insight on that?
Probably 2 years ago we tried the 2 cuts with some sorghum sudan that we were able to get established earlier in June. We took 1 cutting in probably late July, and we did a low rate manure application, and then we did our 2nd cut after freezing. Would have been like in October. Did that kind of in a direct cut versus the cut and wilt that we do otherwise. But we feel that there's more tonnage with the single cut management. There's more tonnage and there's less expense. There's less expense of having to harvest and cut and everything twice. So it certainly is an option, and it is an option to be able to spread manure or get out nutrients in midsummer if you wanted to do a multi-cut system. But we've been happy with the single cut, and we feel by having the single cut and taking it in late August or early September, which is still hopefully warm days in Door County, that we're able to dry out that crop of 5 ton of dry matter.
Okay. One of the questions or comments that we can hear from people that plant sorghum sudan for the first time is sometimes there's some struggles with the harvesting, just due to the large windrows, being able to merge it, being able to process that. You have any tips on what has worked and maybe what to avoid for other folks?
Yeah, we cut it with the haybine and give it 24 to 48 hours to wilt, and then we'll chop it with our hay head. We found that the longer cut, we have the chopper set to the longest cut possible, 3/4 inch or 22 millimeters. That helps, and also we always use an inoculant on it, and we've had good results even in that 30, even as low as 25% dry matter. It looks really scary when you're making it, but it's really ensiled well, had very little spoilage, and made a really good feed even at that low of dry matter.
Okay. Erica, could I ask you to put up the feed analysis for the sorghum sudan that Tony shared with us? Tony, do you just want to walk us through a little bit on the feed analysis and what you're looking at? You mentioned that the moisture, you're comfortable with putting it up even wetter than what most people might think.
Yeah, here we're at 31% dry matter, which is, I would say, pretty typical for the sorghum BMR that we harvest. If this was a corn silage or a haylage, you would be pretty scared at that level, but it ensiles well for us at that. Here you see the 11, almost 12% crude protein, which is a good benefit. And but what really is the advantage of the BMR is the high NDF, high digestibility in the 60% range. here down lower on the page. So we really feel this makes a quality heifer feed, and we haven't. I've gotten this question before if we've used it in our milking cow diets. We have not, but I think it certainly could be, and it's kind of our insurance policy. If we had a year where we were short of forage, I wouldn't be afraid to use the inclusion rate of this type of product in our milking cow diets.
Storage wise for sorghum sudan, any differences in packing this in the bunkers that you guys utilize?
Yeah, we have bunkers or piles, some of each. Like I said, in the harvesting, I think the longer cut has reduced the leaching of the sorghum sudan. So that's something that's helped. And inoculant, I think, is a must for products, feeds like this. But no, it's a wet product, so it packs well, and we cover it and feed it out like any other of our forages.
Okay. One thing you mentioned as we were going through here was some of the soil health benefits, and as we've started to see more and more of the sorghum sudan, it has just a tremendous root system on it, and I think that's probably a factor that was helping with the trafficability that you guys were seeing this last year. But other soil health benefits you want to elaborate on?
Yeah, certainly with this system, the land is covered all year long. With the cover crop and the sorghum, I think we're greatly obviously reducing erosion, and we're improving soil health. Certainly with the no-till and the low disturbance applying the manure. I think we're certainly building the soil health in this field and the other fields that we're doing it as you mentioned, Barry. The infiltration is just tremendous. Actually, Barry was out and we did the weather simulator, and the sorghum just took up so much water. It was even that much better than a 3 or 4 year old established hay field as the infiltration rate of the sorghum sudan. So I even know there was quite a few people recommending maybe even trying sorghum sudan on some of the fields from last year that had a lot of ruts or a lot of damage, that sorghum sudan could be a crop to kind of help get some of those acres turned back around.
Yeah, that was a approach that we were talking about. Like Tony said, we had a lot of damaged fields from last fall. I guess we can say we've been blessed with an earlier spring or an earlier planting season this year. But that was an approach that we were promoting. If folks needed to fix up fields, get manure out, because there was a lot of pressure with full manure pits this spring. That sorghum sudan gave a little bit more time before it needed to be established, and with the extreme root system that it had, could help break up some of that compaction that we undoubtedly put into fields last year. So I guess just kind of wrapping up the questions in regards to this alternative forage. Any last words of wisdom, good or bad, lessons learned?
No, I think like if you were to try this or any other management practice, start small, start with a field, or maybe get that rye or triticale established after a small grain, or maybe one of your first corn silage fields to come off. And I think you'll be delighted to see the growth and what that stand looks like, and the erosion and soil health benefits it's giving you that next spring into your next cropping season. And if you're in the right area or right conditions to try sorghum sudan, whether maybe you have a hay field that dies off, or you need maybe even after wheat, if you take off wheat early, it might be an opportunity to try something like this where you have fairly minimal input costs and can receive the benefits through soil health and through feed for your animals.
Yeah, just elaborating a little bit on that. After winter wheat, we have been starting to see more sorghum sudan being mixed into a like a multi-species cover crop, just to add some diversity. It also is extremely important for mycorrhiza fungi. So it's a good crop to promote that in your soil. So Erica, that kind of wraps up the questions in regards to the alternative forage. I think you wanted to maybe take some questions now, if I was remembering.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions specifically related to the forages just talked about, please type those in the chat now before we move on to the next section. I have one question from myself. Tony, as in last year, it seemed like this alternative forage became more popular. Did you have any trouble sourcing seed or finding, or is there availability of variety selection for this, for the sorghum?
Yeah, fortunately, we did not have any trouble supplying that. But I mean, I guess if in the future, if we do, that's a good problem. That means it's kind of gained popularity, like you said. But no, we were able to source the seed necessary for our crop.
Great. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. So maybe we can move on to the next set of questions, and then feel free, if anyone still has questions they haven't quite got in there yet, to type them out. Oh, looks like we have one. Any experience on the drought tolerance of sorghum sudan compared to corn silage?
Yeah, I guess the last 2 years we haven't dealt with a drought. We've kind of dealt with the opposite of it. But yeah, I mean, in my research and reading of sorghum sudan, that's one of the touted benefits is the drought resistance compared to corn silage, because sorghum sudan needs very little rain comparatively to corn. Sorghum sudan likes heat and can grow quite a bit more on an inch of rain than what corn silage can. So I guess that would be one benefit that we have if we do get into a dry year, is that we're a little bit hedged by having both sorghum sudan and corn silage.
Good, thanks. Now I think we can move into the next set of questions.
Okay. Tony, we kind of started out the webinar by mentioning Peninsula Pride and the watershed, the farmer-led watershed group. And so as a member of Peninsula Pride, what are the major issues that the group has tried to address in the watershed?
Yeah, Peninsula Pride is made up of southern Door County and Kewaunee counties. Even within our 2 counties, we have a lot of difference in soil types and management practices. But I guess the one that comes kind of to the top of the list is some of the shallower soils, working to continue to improve water quality in our area. So I think that's probably the main reason we all started and are working together to continue to bring new management practices to our area.
How many members are there with Peninsula in the Peninsula Pride group?
There's just shy of 50 farmer members, and then there's other supporting groups and organizations that are members as well.
So there's been a number of conservation practices that have been tried in the watershed. And so as a group, how do you guys know if things are being successful?
Well, I think we see the management practices spreading to other farms in our area, and not only the members, but farms that are not members, kind of coming to our field days and seeing some of the different things that we're doing, whether it be the low disturbance manure, the cover crops, the planting green, or just anything along that lines that we're trying to take a look at to see if it can fit our farms. Everybody's farm is different. Everybody's management practice is different. So that's where I think the field days and the demonstrations are important, that the more time farmers can get to see different things and perhaps bring something back to their own farm, I think is beneficial.
You mentioned, planting green, and you also mentioned the use of cover crops. And I guess I add on to the statements that you said. Just driving through the watershed, it's obvious that the message has gotten out. We're seeing more and more cover crops out there. We're seeing more and more attempts at no-till and planting green, which I think your farm was planting green yesterday, you said, right?
Yes, yeah, we had a field that we had winter wheat on last year, about a 40-acre field, and it's actually a field that's less than 2 feet of soil. So obviously we don't haul any manure on that field. But after the winter wheat, we did a diverse cover crop with a sorghum sudan and clover, and then this spring we just no-tilled into that. So I'm excited and interested to see how it does, and I think it's certainly in that case where you have land that has very little topsoil to begin with. I think it's beneficial to do the cover crops and build organic matter and kind of reduce or eliminate the tillage on land like that.
Sometimes cost share is needed for having folks try new practice, and so I know through our agency we have that available. But do you guys also have cost share available through the Peninsula Pride group for some practices?
Yeah, we do provide cost sharing to our farmer members to try. I think we have 5 or 6 different categories. Like I said, cover crops, low disturbance, grass buffer strips, and different management practices that can be cost shared. I think it's certainly helped encourage people to try something new. And what we've been really pleased to find is that the farmers have been doing those conservation practices on many more acres than what they're getting cost shared. I mean, there's a lot more cover crops going in than just what's cost shared. There's a lot more buffer strips than just what's cost shared. And I think that's really positive for the future, that we're all seeing the benefits of these practices. Maybe the cost share helps get it started, but I think the momentum builds to continue those practices.
Something that's unique in Peninsula Pride, as we mentioned, is there's a farmer-led watershed, but then there's also the Demonstration Farm Network. And so we have 4 producers that are members of the Demo Farm Network, but that are also Peninsula Pride members. Do you want to just talk a little bit about quarterly when we meet the 4 farms and a few of us, just to throw out ideas and things that worked and didn't work? Is that a big benefit, or?
Yeah, that's expanding upon that, with Peninsula Pride and with the demo farms. That's one of the biggest advantages my brother and I have found through is the interaction with other farmers and the sharing of ideas. And certainly with the demo farms, it takes it even to another level where we're all trying something new within demo farms, and we meet quarterly and kind of share how it worked and what's been working and what's not. And I think that helps give all of us confidence in trying something new. And even, like I said, even if it's on a smaller field or 10 acres, 20 acres, 40 acres, but getting something started. So most certainly the demo farms has been a great benefit to my brother and I.
From the community standpoint, are you seeing a shift in the mindset of the community? Is there positive comments that you're starting to hear? There was just some divisiveness in that area up there. Has that been changing with the implementation of some conservation practices?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to think so. I mean, certainly we're working together to get the message out there and to demonstrate and show that we're working together as farmers and with allied industries. And supporters to try new things and do better. You know, we hope to do better in conservation management 5 years from now than we are now. And the only way we're going to do that is to continue to try new things and improve what we do. And I think we found that last year, even with as challenging of a year, the wet year that we had. And I think we found the community to be very understanding sometimes when roads needed to be cleaned up or things like that. I think we're finding that the community and the farmers are much closely knit than some people led us to believe.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted you to maybe share an example. You know, you talked about sharing between farmers, but one of the other goals between Peninsula Pride and the demo farms has been is sharing with the non-ag community what's going on farms, what you guys are trying to promote, what you're trying to improve on. And you guys have held a couple events over the course of the last couple of years. There was a meeting at night where folks from the community could come in, but also the Festival for Nature was an event. And you want to expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, the Festival of Nature was an opportunity for anyone in Door County to visit different parts of nature, whether it be woodlands or waterways, or one of the options was a farm. And we were delighted that we had great response, and certainly was non-farm people that had not a lot of previous experience with farms, but we were able to show them some of the things that we're doing conservation wise. We were able to show them some of the things we're doing with the animals, and we were really delighted with interaction, the questions that they got, and we thought that they left with an even stronger understanding of what we're trying to do in agriculture to produce a crop and produce animals, but also do it in a conservation-minded way.
Well, Tony, I'm going to wrap it up with one last question here. You know, what advice would you give to other folks out there that are maybe thinking about trying to start a farmer-led watershed? Any words of wisdom from the last couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it takes a lot of people. I mean, it takes a committed group of farmers of all varying sizes and of interests. I think that's been a benefit of our group, as we have different sized farms, some livestock farms, some dairy farms, but then also along that lines, it's work with the people around you, work with NRCS, work with your soil and water departments. I mean, the sharing of ideas, also DATCAP, obviously, the sharing of ideas and collaboration is really what has helped our group and brought about more ideas and brought about, I think, better management practices in our area.
Well, thank you. Erica, I guess I'd turn it back over to you if there's some questions that we can answer, or if you had some more insight that you wanted on something.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Barry and Tony. That was awesome. If anyone has any questions for Barry and Tony, feel free to put those in the chat box now, and we can take a couple of those.
I'll just ask too, Tony, what is the date of the Festival of Nature tour for this year? Because you're doing it again, right?
Yes, we were planning on doing it again this year, but with COVID-19, it has been, I guess, delayed until perhaps after Labor Day. But it may not happen this year, like so many other things in our area. But we look forward to hosting it again next year if it does.
Okay, sure, got it. Thanks.
Tony, do you feel through your work with Peninsula Pride and the Door Kewaunee Network that do you feel more connected to your neighbors, and do you feel more of a positive relationship with those around you, or were you connected in this way before, or can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think it's positive. I mean, it's positive for the farmers to maybe open up a little bit more and show some of the things that they're doing. I think there was a lot of great things going on before, but with the demo farms and with the watershed groups, maybe as we collaborate and work together, we're able to better demonstrate to the general public all the things that we are doing for conservation. And I think that helps to hopefully build confidence and to reassure them that we're working for continuous improvement.
Yeah, great. I'm not seeing any questions coming in, but a reminder, we had a couple late joiners. If you missed the beginning of this, we will be sharing the recording. And I would like to give a sincere thank you to Barry and Tony for spending time with us today. It might have pulled you away from some field activities, so we appreciate it and appreciate your time spent with us. So thank you.
Thank you for putting this on.
Yeah, and there will be a survey coming out this afternoon. So if you listened in today, please take a couple minutes to fill out the survey. It's pretty short.